Doddie Weir, OBE, capped 61 times by Scotland, scorer of a couple of World Cup quarter-final tries against New Zealand in '95, a '97 Lions tourist, of course. His tour cruelly cut short because of injury that time. An extraordinary MND fundraiser as well. He has desperately, sadly passed away after an incredibly brave battle at the age of just 52. And to help us pay tribute to a truly brilliant man, his old teammate and friend, the one and only Kenny Logan. It's very, very good of you to join us, Kenny, in incredibly sad circumstances. And I just sort of want to start with that, really. Are you bereft and heartbroken and desolate, or have you been quite touched by the extraordinary outpouring of love that your old mucker has had across the rugby landscape this weekend?
Thanks for having me on. It's been a very emotional day, and yesterday was very emotional. And especially, I think last night, just going through all the tributes and funny stories that you just laughed in. And I spent most of the night laughing and crying about things about what Doddie had done and said. He's just left us with a big hole in our heart, really, because he was a phenomenal individual. Never mind what he'd done after his rugby career with the M&D, but before that, he loved to make people laugh, and he enjoyed having a good night and a good laugh. And then when M&D hit him, he took it on like he'd taken on anything else in his life. He just full steam ahead and wanted to find a cure. I remember the first time he'd sat down with the professors, and he says, right, if you don't want to be in this room, get out now, because I'm going to find a cure for this disease. And nobody left the room, and they're still in the room, still trying to find that cure.
How far back do you go with him? When did you first come across the big man?
The first time he punched me was probably, I was about 16, playing for Stirling County under-18s, and he was in their under-18s, and I sidestepped him once, and the second time he just punched me in the head. So that was the first a reunion, the first sort of meet.
How much did that define your relationship over the years to come, that kind of, those antics? Because I saw something actually that Will Carling put on social media, just saying this is how I remember Doddie, and it was basically the two of you bickering up on stage.
Yeah. I mean, we got on really well because he was a farmer, I was a farmer. I got my cap when I was just turned 20. I was in the team at 19, and he was the only one I knew a lot of them, but I knew him because he was a farmer and played against him for years, and he was only 2 years older than me, so there was definitely a real good affinity with each other. But he was a winner, at Newcastle. He was quite aggressive. I don't know, Hask, if you played against him, he wasn't scared of throwing a punch. He wasn't scared of letting you know. And he was just, I think I look back and the things he used to do to Jim Telfer was insane. It was so funny the night before a game. And I remember once he went into his bathroom and put black boot polish all around the seat. And then we had a test match that day. And Jim Telfer comes in and says, "What are you looking at, Logan?" I said, "Nothing, Jim." And this big black ring round his arse. And he was getting a shower. And we were all laughing our head off. And that's what Doddie had done. Doddie had sneaked into his room. But he did it. He loved it. Him and Gary Armstrong. If they were walking around the hotel room the night before a game, you panicked a little bit because they could have been in your room. But 9 times out of 10, it was the coaches they were after.
It would go after the coaches, would it? After that even more, because there's one thing taking out the lads. Can you remember a memorable story?
Him and Gary Armstrong, renowned for it. They would, especially he once did one with John Rutherford, who was the backs coach. They used to have a couple of beers on a Friday night, so him and Gary put cling foil over the toilet. And then when John Rutherford came in, he thought something wrong with the toilet because the pee was bouncing off it. So he phoned up the reception, something wrong with his toilet.
I love these anecdotes. I mean, you could go on for days and days and days. What I sort of wanted to get from you was he was a man who definitely did not suffer fools gladly. He was warm, he was very funny, he was incredibly sort of charismatic, but he was quite sharp as well. Is that a fair kind of point to make at this point? You had to be on your wits around him.
Yeah, definitely, because if not, he would catch you out. And so you always had to be very wary what you said. If it wasn't right, he would just go, "That's bullshit." So which I loved about him. He was, what you see is what you get from Doddie. And his journey's been, the last 6 years has been ups and downs. He's had some great times and he's had some real lows, and how he's reacted to it all, and how he I remember him phoning me up. It was February the 24th. He phoned me up and said, Yeah, it was February. It was before the Lions tour. It was a couple of months before he announced it. And he was trying to get some cheap flights to South Africa, to Australia. And he just slipped in. I've got M&D, so I want to get there quicker. And I went, what? He went, I'll forget about that. Can you get me a deal with the flights? And he hung up. Then I phoned him back and went, Doddie, did you see you've got M&D? He went, yeah, but I'm going to beat it. And that was the first time he told me. Now, because you knew what M&D was through Yusuf van der Veste's, and also with Gerard Cunningham got it at Wasps. I don't know if you were there at Haskell at the time, but Gerard Cunningham got it. So I knew what M&D was and knew what it did to the body. But he was just so positive about the fact that he'd beat it, and the doctor said he would only live 2 years and he'd be in a wheelchair in a year's time. So his mental strength and his belief, and I saw him 2 weeks ago, and he still had that little glint in his eye when you told a joke, and his body was trying to laugh, and it was a pretty sad moment, to be fair.
I mean, just how big a legacy has he left? You know, he's raised over £8 million through the My Doddie Foundation. You know, and obviously he's done incredible work. Just how big a kind of a legacy would he leave in this time? You know, with all the kind of amazing work he's done, and also raising so much awareness.
That's a good point, Hask. I think if you spoke to him about 3 or 4 years ago, he'd have probably thought when he's not here, the foundation would just stop. But he's created such a big animal. It's, you know, we've pledged 8 to 9 million on research. We've probably raised a lot more than that, because we can't just pledge every penny we get, because we've got to make sure we've got resources for the next year and the following year. So he's raised a lot of money, but what he's done to M&D, he's put it on the map. He's put other, you know, do you know what? I spoke to somebody the other day who got M&Ds. You know, he said to me, nobody knows me, but Doddie's given me something to fight for. He's made me go, right, if he can do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fight, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to do all the things that Doddie's done. And his mental strength was his best bit about Doddie. He just believed that he was going to live longer. He believed. And do you know what? Doddie probably knew this. The last 3 weeks, he'd been everywhere. He'd been to the anniversary dinner. He'd gone to Murrayfield. He'd gone up at 5 o'clock in the morning to see Simfield. You know, he's done it for a reason, because I think he generally felt there wasn't long to go, and he wanted to do as much as he could to make as big an impact as he could. And he has. The foundation will get stronger and stronger with Doddie's passing. It won't disappear. It'll just get bigger and bigger, and we'll find, hopefully, a cure for this horrible disease. And it's underfunded. That's his big thing. We need to raise more money. There's a lot of people getting it now. You know, Ed Slater, you know, Rob Burrows is another one, and so we've got to keep the fight and keep his legacy flying high.
If people want to donate and people want to help out, how do they go about doing that?
So they just go to the foundation. My name's Doddie Foundation, and there'll be a donation page on there. And there's loads of fundraisers we're doing. We've got a big announcement around the Rugby World Cup to come out in the next, probably just after Doddie Aid, which starts in January. So, yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of people willing to be part of this story and be part of that cure. I suppose my big thing was, he's done so much for the disease and bringing people together, but I wish we'd seen a bigger sort of chink in the armour where we could say, look, you've made it. He has made a massive impact. I don't want to take that away, but I think he always wanted more. He wanted to say, I've created this tablet, this has done this, it's slowed it down by 60%. But Doddie was always like that. He was not going to take small steps. He wanted big steps. And he always pushed the researchers. And if you speak to the scientists, they just loved the fact that he was pushing them all the time. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And that'll still continue.
We actually did a tour in May this year, and we did a show in Edinburgh. And I don't know if you remember this, but as we were going on stage, somebody wandered back and said, oh, by the way, Doddie Weir's here. And the three of us, with Mike alongside, went, oh, wow, Jesus Christ. And suddenly we felt, God, we're going to have to properly be on our game, because one of the great entertainers in the room, I think he came with his boys, Hamish, Angus and Ben. And as we walked on stage, we said, good evening, everybody. We hadn't had many cheers or very much laughter throughout the course of the tour. But we started by saying, look, we have got amongst us one of the greats. Would you please say good evening to Doddie Weir? And the whole theatre stood as one and applauded him. And it was about the most moving thing that happened to us over the course of 16 shows. Unbelievably amazing to have him there. And we had a very brief catch-up with him afterwards. But I wanted to ask you, do you think he was proud of the work that he'd done? Because it was always about the next thing, as you've said. It was always about wanting more. But was he proud of what he'd done? And was he touched by the incredible esteem and love and affection in which he was so obviously held?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely, I think, getting back to what I said a minute ago, he just wanted more and more and more. And I think a lot of good sportsmen have got that. They just want more and more and more. They want more success. He wanted to really push the boundaries. He has definitely done that. He has put M&D on the map on the UK and Europe. And even in America, people are talking about what he's been doing. In Australia, they're contacting the foundation about the work the foundation's done. You know, we are a research charity. You know, we're not, we do look pastoral care, but it's very much, Doddie said, look, this is where I want to go. I want to be all about research. I want to try and find something that makes an impact on people's life. Wherever, you know, we might just start slowing it down, but he believes we can find something that just can turn it backwards to reverse it all. And that's his big thing. And if you speak to the researchers, they do believe they'll find something, but we need to be funded.
I only sadly got to meet Doddie at the dinner we did in where was it, in Switzerland? Geneva.
Yeah.
It did the dinner in Geneva. I'd never met Doddie beforehand, so I met him there.
Really?
And obviously then saw him on tour. I'd never had an opportunity. Obviously I'd heard a lot about him. I think, Kenny, for those people who didn't meet him, I know you've shed a little bit of light on his character, but could you give him, if you were going to sum him up to some people in a few words, what would you describe Doddie as? Because obviously you told us he's competitive, he's relentless, and he's cheeky. But you know, just try and give us an image of that and and how you'd want him to be remembered and how you think he'd want to be remembered.
He gives everybody time. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whoever you stand up to be or what you're not, he'll always give you time. And I think that's one of the things. He would always spend time with somebody. He would never just go, I'm too big for you. He was always there for people. And he's one of these guys that if you had a problem or you needed somebody to come and help you, he'd be the first guy you would phone and the first guy to turn up at your door. We use the legend easily sometimes, but he just was a man that enjoyed helping people, enjoyed people enjoyed a laugh, and he wanted people to have a good time. If somebody wasn't having a good time, he'd go and sit with them and understand why they're not having a good time. You know, he was one of these guys that just enjoyed the moment and lived every day as if it was his last.
Did he ever speak to you about the end? Did he ever say, obviously at some point this is going to happen? And if so, did he say, fuck's sake, Kenny, don't cry, have a wee dram for me? Like, what was his final thoughts? Because I imagine if he was only given a couple of years to live and he's absolutely just, you know, beat that and he showed his kind of willing. Did you have those conversations, and what did he say? When
we did his first dinner in Battersea, and I said, we're going to do this dinner for you. He goes, oh no, nobody will turn up. I said, no, we'll do this dinner. And we did, I think within 3 months we had 1,400 people at this dinner, and he raised about 850,000. And that was a moment for him. He realised that he could make an impact in this disease because the warmth for him, and this was a dinner in London, it wasn't a dinner in Scotland or anyone else. And I think the amazing thing that Doddie's done, even though he wore tartan every minute of the day, you know, he's recognised all over the world, and the amount of English fans, Welsh fans, Irish fans, Kiwis, all supported him through this journey. But I've now forgotten the question, Haskell. I'm getting old.
I meant what he must have talked to you. He must have said, Kenny, when this ends, you know, I know, like I've always said, if I go, you know, I don't really want people to say things that weren't true. I quite like someone to stand at my funeral and go, listen, he was a bit of a dickhead. Some people liked him, some people didn't. You know,
and I'll tell you to your face, Haskell.
That's the problem is everyone does.
Jesus Christ.
And I'd say everyone have a bit of a party. Let's all get pissed up. Let's celebrate it. Let's move on. When you know you're on a ticking clock, I just wondered whether he ever sat down and said, Kenny, look, when I do go, I don't want this to be a miserable affair. I want you to carry on. Was there any of that conversation happen?
No, we never really. We talked. I think the interesting thing for me was because of M&D, your body starts to slow down, and he was never going to have a tube in his mouth or a pipe let him to breathe. And he said no to the tube into his stomach would feed him, because he said no, if I can't eat, I don't want to be here. So as he was, people were saying you should get these things done, you should get the tube in your side. He was, no, that's not happening. I'll know when I'm ready to go. And I think he never ever talked about dying. He just talked about being positive. And one thing he would want us to do is have a laugh. I mean, he must look down and be so proud of the amount of people that have come out and spoke so highly about him. But they probably said that before anyway. Kathy said once, because he's doing my head in so much, I might take him to Switzerland. Which I was like, really? But she just.
What was he doing?
Chloe tried to take me to Switzerland the other day. I was asleep, Kenny. I was asleep. I woke up on a plane. She goes, shh.
What was he doing to drive her to that point?
Doddie's stubborn, right? He's very stubborn, and if he doesn't want to do something, he will not do it. And if he is wanting to do something, he'll achieve his goals. That's one thing I'd say about his a character. He was a stubborn bloke. I spoke to Gary Armstrong yesterday, and he's his big mate. And one thing Gary said to him as soon as it all came out, he said, listen, Doddie's got this long road into his farm. And he said, listen, see all those potholes you've got? Don't you think I'm filling them in for you going up and down there with your wheelchair? So there was a lot of banter. And Doddie wanted to laugh about it. He didn't want to, he wanted to have fun. He wanted to take the mickey out of it. But there was also that huge serious side to Doddie about trying to find this cure and make an impact, and which he has. He's made an impact in many people's lives, so he's not even met them. He's made an impact, especially in the M&D world.
Kenny, I was thinking if you want to have a laugh at the funeral, just lift your kilt up and let everyone see, and everyone will be pissing themselves next to the graveside, so it should be all right.
I'll try that, yeah. I'll try that. That's a good... Yeah. How's your chip like anyway?
Yeah, it's good. The little button mushroom's doing well. It's doing
good
well.
Lad. Good lad. You see, you got a little one in the way. You've got a little.
I have. It works. Oh, it works. To look at it, you never would have guessed it, but it absolutely does. One shot, one goal.
Only in a Doddie Weir obit would we be talking about your button mushrooms. The thing I wanted to touch on, Kenny, was his presence amongst his peers, because I did a couple of bits with him on Sky, and I go back to the fact that Christ, you didn't want to get it wrong around him. I also was lucky enough to have a couple of weekends playing in the Legends Golf at Loch Lomond, where they raised a lot of money for Sparks. And what was always fascinating about that is there was a collection of the great and good. So Jeremy Guscott, Paul Wallace, Ian Evans, John Bentley, etc. would come. But Doddie was always the legend amongst the legends. Now, it obviously helps if you're 6'7", etc. But he had so much sort of camaraderie around him and so much energy that he gave to a room. I just wonder whether that sort of equates with how you remember him. He just made things happen. You wanted to be in the room, and that is amongst his peers and those that he played at the very highest level with.
Yeah, I mean, he had that aura about him. He had that sort of, if you're around Doddie, something was going to happen. Yeah. Sometimes bad, right? But in general, pretty good. And when I first started helping him out with the foundation, he said, right, well, it's a dial change, Kenny. We're going to have a proper dial change. And we want to make things happen. And that was him. He was that character. He didn't want to sit back. He didn't watch other people do it. He'd do it himself. If he couldn't do it, he'd tell me to do it or tell somebody else to do it. But he definitely was that character that you like to be around, because he fills your heart with fun. Yeah. And, yesterday, I haven't felt this sort of soreness for a long, long time. Probably since I lost my dad or my cousins. And it's quite a hard thing to talk about when somebody's made that much impact in your life and you've enjoyed being around them. Even just 2 weeks ago, I went to his house and he obviously struggling to speak, but just being in the presence of him and him laughing at the things that you say, or he'd turn around and go and shake his head knowing that that's wrong. And you're right, he did pick you up and he was great at it, and it kept your feet in the ground.
Extraordinarily inspirational in all he did. Give us your memories of him as a player and a trainer and a teammate and a sort of, a man in his boots.
He was never the best trainer in the world. Doddie was a fit boy, but if he could get out of training, he would get out of it. But I remember when I thought, 6'7", and he's probably about 15 stone when he played for Scotland, They just threw him up in the line out. But he became more than that, he started putting the weight on. And I think because he was an amateur rugby player and he went professional, when him and Gary went to Newcastle, and that's where you really saw Doddie becoming a proper international rugby player because he got bigger and his chest was big. He started to train because he had to train. He wasn't just going on the farm. I've just worked the whole days in the farm and sat in the tractor. So, but he was natural strength. He was a farmer, so he had natural strength. But he was a great line-out jumper, but also carried well and physical. He wasn't scared to put a hit in. And in the days when he played, you could have a proper fight, and he'd be in the middle of it. He'd be setting it up, and he'd be trying to finish it. And him and Martin Johnson had many good things. And if you speak to Martin about him, he was a hard man. Even though he was only maybe at the end, he was maybe only 17, 18 stone. He was one of these guys, you look in the changing room, and if Doddie was in the changing room, there's something good about it. There was just a feeling that, Doddie's playing, because he had played for Scotland when he was 19 in the 1991 World Cup, I think. And then he played in the in the 99 World Cup. So he played a year before I did. So he was this young star everybody talking about, but he wasn't like a big second row. He was, as Bill McLaren said, he ran like a giraffe, out of control. But he was. I think Newcastle days were his best days. He had great days at Melrose, but I think he saw the best of him. And then the Lions, just so unlucky with that horrible injury he got.
Was he angry about it? Did he find that easy to park? Or because a lot of people would have said he would have started alongside Johnson if he'd stayed fit.
Yeah, but if you watch the video when he was told, fair enough. Yeah, that was his attitude. He just went, I'll get on with it. I'll just get it. How long will it be? Oh, will that be all right next week? No. How long are you out for? Oh, a couple of months. Oh well, it's been a good tour so far. That was the way his mindset was. He just got over things very quickly and moved on. And I think I wouldn't say he got over M&D, but he certainly put everything into it and made an impact on the disease, and he'll never ever be forgotten.
You are absolutely bang on in that. He was absolutely one of a kind, incredibly brave and inspirational, and has given a lot of people a lot of joy, not only as a player, but in the way that he sort of entertained us all. And hopefully, if people are watching and listening, and you can find your way to popping a pound in the pot of the My Name's Doddie Foundation, obviously the work continues and we'll go on and on and on from here. How are you? Oh boy, because you've had a tough couple of months, haven't you?
I've had a tough couple of months, prostate cancer, but I'm all right now. I'm very lucky to, I sort of managed to stumble across it about February. Well,
you lost your car keys up there, did you, or something? Lost the remote again?
No. I'm just glad to get it back.
Yes, that's what I say. Oh, it happens, mate. What? Gabby left her wedding ring up there again, did she? Oh,
yeah,
God.
Easy time.
Hask, every time we're trying to talk about some getting men checked.
Because that's how Kenny's relentlessly giving me shit for but more smile on my face since I've known him. But when I saw the news, I was sitting there and I was like, flashed that that I've had prostate cancer. I was like, fucking hell, you kept that quiet. Rang him straight up. I was like, you're right. I was like, yeah. It is terrifying in that period of time, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was 2020 December. I got a random test, and the guy said your prostate's a bit high. Don't worry about it. So the surgeon, my surgeon, sort of said, well, we'll just check it. It was fine. Well, it was a bit high, and he said he wasn't worried, but as weeks went on, he said he was worried. He just didn't want to tell me because it was Christmas time. And then the following year, I'd got another couple of tests and the PSA levels had gone high. So he said, look, we need to get it out. So the operation is quite invasive. So they stab you about 6 times in the stomach to get it out. And it's right to the bottom of your core. So it's quite an invasive operation. It took me about 3 to 4 months to recover properly. And it does make you think, because it's one of the biggest killers for men. And it's one of these cancers, if you don't go looking for it and it finds you, it's probably too late.
Shit. God,
So
well done.
lucky.
Has that changed your perspective on everything at all? I mean, obviously, coupled with your old mate that we've been talking about, or is it just sort of, cleared that hurdle, let's crack on?
Well, it's been tough because Tom Smith also passed away this year. So we've had 2 great rugby players and another different sort of legend to the game. And we are at that stage in our life where diseases, divorces and deaths, and there's no more stag weekends or 30ths. They're well gone. 60ths now, 50ths. But so we've this year's been quite tough for. And when I went to Tom's funeral, I knew I had my prostate was not right, and just thinking that Tom was the one who was a bit unlucky. He had bowel cancer, but you know, as we get older, we've got to get tested. We've got to look after ourselves, because just getting a simple test can save your life.
Very strong messaging. We would love at some point to have a sit down with the first couple of rugby when Gabby's back from doing the round ball game. It'd be great fun to chew the fat with both of you. But what's keeping you busy at the moment? You're obviously down at Wasps. Is your boy still playing at Wasps?
Midlands now.
Midlands? What does that mean?
Because Wasps don't have academy anymore, so he's...
Sorry. Yes, that would be right.
Yeah.
So what does that mean, Midlands? Just in the Midlands Academy?
So it means it's the Wasps Academy, but he's in that... It's now called the Midlands Academy. He's also in the England under-18s, which is very...
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Are you saying that with a smile, or are you trying to drag him north of the border?
Well, I mean, at the moment, that's the best thing for him. You know, he's enjoying his rugby and, you know, see what happens. But if he, you know, it's the main thing is to enjoy it, and that's what he's doing. But he's Wasps is sad at the moment, but there is a team working behind the scenes.
I feel like we need to cheer you up, Kenny.
No!
Jesus, I feel like we might have to have an intervention. I mean, you know, I'm not sure I want to be friends with you, because you had a nightmare situation.
My son's
in the
playing for
fucking ground
England.
Everyone's dying. Everyone's got cancer. You're like, this is a nightmare. Well, no, I mean, what do we need to take him out for a night out or something?
No, I'm good. It's been quite weird the last 24 hours. You sort of like this morning, I did a radio, I did a TV, and I struggled to hold myself together because of the emotions, and I feel a bit more. As Doddie would say, pull yourself together, you big idiot. Yeah. Well, so I think I've just been a bit more serious today than normal, because it's been quite hard. You know, I've generally, the amount of people have contacted me about meeting Doddie once and the impact he left in their lives. So when you lose somebody like that, it's quite hard, isn't it? You just sort of, you get a bit serious, but I'm still quite funny sometimes.
Okay, because I'm a bit worried, because I was going to fly to Dubai tomorrow, but I feel like I might have to come around and make sure you're all right.
Seriously, I'm not desperate for you. You fly to Dubai.
Wait,
Switzerland.
Switzerland. I could push you over the edge. But, I mean, I'll just go back to the answer to Scotland. That was, when you gave that answer, it was very much like almost like a media answer, but I can imagine you've got like a pen and you're putting it in your leg going, that's the best for him now. It's, you know, his age group. Because have you said to him, listen, son, over my dead body, you're fucking playing for England? Or have you just said, look, play around now?
Could go to Wales, of course.
Oh, yeah, could go to Wales.
Yeah, could go to Wales. I would do that next.
Would you be actually asked, no, genuinely, because I wonder about, would you actually be asked, as long as he was happy and playing rugby, would you really care?
Listen, I'd love it to play for Scotland, but it's 25 grand a game, isn't it? No,
yeah,
I'd love it to play for Scotland.
Oh,
I'd love it to play for Scotland, but you know, when you live down here, it's so hard to be up there for sessions and you're out of sight, out of mind a little bit. Right. So his best pathway is to play for England, and you know, who knows what's going to happen. If he's good enough, he's good enough. If not, he's going to play for Wales.
By the way, do you want me to stop by on the way? Do you want me to stop by on the way home and give you a hug? Would you like that?
Tonight.
Well, I mean, I'll probably nip round tonight, or you know, I'll come round at some point.
Whereabouts? Sorry. When you go to Dubai, come back rested, and we'll have a lunch.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Come round with your little one. We'll have lunch.
I've never been to Chateau Logan, because apparently it's
your mum's been. Your mum's been. Your mum's still on my logs, remember?
I better check on her. Jesus, she'll be in the ground if she's been hanging out with you.
What I love about this, Kenny, is just bringing you in to reminisce about Doddie, and this is the sort of shit he'd have loved, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just sort of arsing about. And listen, good on you. Will you look after yourself? You know, make sure that you're doing the right thing.
And very lucky, and thanks for your support to Doddie. It means a lot to us in the foundation, and hopefully a lot of big things to come.
Yeah, good on you. We'll stick the right links in the right places so people can click and donate. And in the meantime, look after yourself. We'd love to catch up properly soon. Love the family, and thanks so much for swinging by. Good on you, Kenny. Cheers.